Today I'm going to answer a viewer email and give you 5 tips for when your surveillance goes sideways. Hi, Larry K, ShadowAnyone.com, and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, Premium Private Investigator Training from someone who's been there and done that. Today I got an email. It starts out, "Hi, sir," which not a sir, just Larry. I'm Larry. I don't know if this question is explored in your training videos, but I want to ask nonetheless. While conducting a surveillance, how far will you pursue an individual if and when you realize that he or she will be driving further than expected? For example, you think somebody's simply going to be driving around town or in the local area, but maybe they end up hitting the interstate and it becomes clear they'll be driving dozens or even hundreds of miles, completely throwing off your surveillance plan. This can be a problem when you have other cases later in the day and need to return to the office for those. And obviously, if you've been unable to get the video or photo evidence that you need, by the time you realize the pursuit may last for hundreds of miles, this can be a problem as well. Especially if you're unable to reach the client and let them authorize the extra mileage and travel expenses. Just curious how you handle these situations. Thanks in advance, Miles. Miles, thank you so much, Miles, for sending in this question, and thank you for watching. I'm going to knock this out for you bit by bit. Number one thing, the tip I'm going to give you, and it's unlikely this will happen, but it's very important that you watch out for it. Make sure that this is not a trap, that this person is not driving you out into the middle of nowhere, that they know you're following them, and maybe their buddies are going to show up, block you in. Likewise, bringing you into a neighborhood or a place you're not familiar with. I do cover this, all of this, on the Investigator's Ultimate Guide to Surveillance. And I talk about how to park and that so that you don't get trapped. But watch out that it's not a trap. Number two, make sure you have enough gas. This is fundamental. There's no reason to start a surveillance without a full tank of gas. And I don't care if it's just a stationary surveillance, a quote-unquote routine thing where you're going to be out just watching some guy's house for 4 hours to record who's coming and going. It's just maybe it's a preliminary thing. No reason not to start with a full tank of gas. And what do I charge the client? For my regular clients, I will use my judgment. Now, my thing is I will follow a subject as far as they'll go. I don't have a limit on that. If I have a regular client, I usually have a feel for whether they're going to pay for the extra. I have a feel for if this is something that's turning into a worthwhile surveillance to follow the person. But I sometimes have to take it on the chin. If I do extra for a client and they end up not wanting to pay it, okay, all right, you got me. But don't expect me to do any extra next time, and I won't. If we understand that 4 hours means 4 hours and that's it, at 4 hours I'm stopping. Now I gotta admit I still probably would stick with the person a little bit longer if I think they're going to land someplace. I have a real tough time giving up until I get the evidence that I need. And I mean, I have no problems with going the extra mile for the client. That's just good business. That's good life. That's something you should be thinking about all the time anyways. Your regular surveillance people that you work for, workers' comp companies, things like this, you'll have a relationship with them to know. And sometimes they'll have policies and procedures in place and that you already know whether extra is authorized or not. I never did this. If you want, you can put in your surveillance contract that the client agrees to pay 10% above whatever the estimate is. I don't do that. I don't necessarily advise it. If you're that hung up on the money, maybe you've got to think in other terms as far as the service that you're giving the person. We don't want to get cheated, but it's really hard to get cheated with a regular client who you have an existing relationship with. Go that extra mile, give them what they need. So the bottom line is I will follow them as far as they got to go. And if I don't have the client's authorization, express authorization to go further, I'll use my own judgment on it. Here's the key. If you give extra, you have to be prepared to eat it. there's the way it is. If you're going to give them an extra hour, a half hour, if you say I'm going to follow this guy another 30 miles, if it pans out, you're a hero. If it doesn't, you cannot hold a grudge. You have to be prepared to say, well, I'm just going to have to eat it. That'll help you a lot. Number 4, what if you haven't gotten the evidence yet? You know, this is an interesting thing, because sometimes just the subject driving out into left field is evidence for you, and sometimes that's enough evidence. I'll give you an actual case example. I worked once, was hired by the wife to follow the husband. She thought he might be cheating. It was a weekend day, and he's going into work. So I follow the subject. He does not go to work. He goes and picks up a blonde, and they get in a car, and they start to drive, and they are on the interstate, heading out of town. Nothing, it's going to be a while. They're undoubtedly gone. So I follow them for a while and realize that this is going to be a long trip. They're on a road trip of some sort. And I call the client. Now, I had him picking up the blonde, which was great evidence. I had him not going to work, which is arguably enough evidence. He's definitely lying to his wife. But the going off in left field is not going to work, and that's strong right there. Now, the client in this case was able to assess what was going on and very quickly say, oh, he's going up to the boathouse. Yeah, you don't have to follow him all. This is enough. I know what's going on at this point. But even if he hadn't picked up the blonde, driving that far out and not going to work might have been enough evidence to say, well, you're lying to me about something, even though I didn't have the investigator follow you all the way. And tip number 5, what if you have another surveillance scheduled for later in the day? That ain't going to happen. It's very rare that you're going to have more than one surveillance in the day. You may have other things you've got to do, some process that you want to serve. You may want to conduct a witness interview, that type of thing. But here's the thing, have a backup plan if you realize you're going to be gone for a big chunk of time. Now, my backup plan, and I don't have any investigators working for me now, my business model, I'm not interested in that. That's why I do the training and the consulting now. But I used to have always one investigator, sometimes 2 or 3 investigators registered under my license, and I could call them and say, hey, are you free this afternoon? Can you help me out? Can you go do this thing? And of course, they're employees, they're going to get paid. And if that, I even had a backup plan from that if you don't have an investigator working for you. I have other agencies in the area, private investigator friends, buddies of mine that I can call and say, hey, are you interested in picking up a surveillance this afternoon? Now, I can either go one of 2 ways with that. I can pay them their rate, and a lot of guys charge less than me and still make a little bit on the side, just sort of subcontract it out. Or I could give them the whole thing that I'm making. Here's what you got to remember. Maybe you were looking forward to a nice little $600 surveillance later in the day. Even if you have to hire another agency, and I'm talking about someone you know, trust, have experience with. Don't try to do this on the fly. But if you have to hire another agency and you end up paying them extra, maybe you were planning on making $600 for this surveillance and you end up paying them $700. It costs you $100 out of your pocket. But if you've kept the client happy, and this is a repeat client, that very well could be worth it. Remember, your integrity and doing what you say has a real value, and this is a chance where you can say, okay, I can start to put a dollar value on that. In order to keep my word, here's what I'm willing to pay. Miles, I hope these are some helpful tips for you. Anybody else, if you've got questions, email me. I'm happy to answer any that I can, and maybe even share them here. This is Larry K, shadowanyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.